Welcome to the podcast that will teach you how to successfully invest in and build steady streams of passive income from the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Veteran real estate investors Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart from Mobile Home Park Academy will personally share with you the valuable lessons they've learned along their journey as mobile home park investors, so that you too can learn how to build massive cash flow and huge profits from this extremely lucrative niche. So without further ado, let's welcome your hosts for today's show, Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart.
Welcome, guys and gals, to the Mobile Home Park Investing Weekly Podcast. We'll provide all the information that you need to know to successfully locate, negotiate, close on, and make huge profits from the lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. I'm your host, Kevin Bupp, and in today's show, we're going to be speaking with DJ Pendleton, who is the Executive Director of the Texas Manufactured Housing Association. Now, a little bit about DJ. He holds an MS in accounting from Texas A&M University and a JD from Baylor University. He's a licensed attorney in Texas specializing in real estate and finance. And so I'm super excited to get onto the show with DJ here today. But before we do, here's a quick word from our show sponsor, Sunrise Capital Investors. Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here with Sunrise Capital Investors. As you are hopefully already well aware if you've been a listener for any period of time, my goal has always been to provide you with as much value as I possibly can through my two podcasts, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow and the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. As our audience continues to grow, literally, we've been downloaded millions of times by folks in over 125 countries. I've had thousands of people reach out looking to get involved in our niche. And that's the phenomenal niche of mobile home park investing. For those that don't know, I've been a full-time real estate investor for nearly 20 years now, and I've personally invested in and have owned apartment complexes, various commercial properties, hundreds of single-family rentals, and I've interviewed some of the most successful investors in just about every other asset class, and I've arrived at this one very simple conclusion. Mobile home parks are hands down the best investment I've found to date. Why? They provide investors with the best risk-adjusted returns out of any other real estate sector that I've seen. Investing in real estate can get complicated, and I really want to simplify this process for you. If you're someone who wants to diversify away from the uncertainty of Wall Street and allocate a percentage of your real estate portfolio to mobile home parks, but maybe you don't have the time nor the inclination to personally locate good deals yourself, then our team will do it for you. At Sunrise Capital Investors, our team specializes in the acquisitions and management of undervalued and highly profitable mobile home parks. And we are now providing accredited investors with an opportunity to participate directly alongside our team in our up-and-coming deals. And let me say this, I believe that we are hands down the best in our space at sourcing highly profitable off-market deals. That's really what makes us unique in this niche and as investment managers. As stewards of your capital, we truly are aligned with our investors. We've structured our investment fund so that we as a company are incentivized in the same way the investor is, which is through the performance of the investment itself. In addition, we want to make sure that we not only make money for our investors, but that they understand how it's being made. That's why we provide our accredited partners with a private monthly podcast that walks them through the detailed updates on how their investment is performing. And we're very transparent, providing you with the good, the bad, and the ugly at times. And so if you'd like to learn more about the partnership opportunities with our team here at Sunrise, please go visit sunrisecapitalinvestors.com and click on the investors link to get signed up. It's absolutely free and you'll get placed on the priority list of when new opportunities come along. Also, feel free to call us at 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. Again, that's 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. And one of our investor relations team members will help you schedule an appointment to speak with one of our managing principals. If you have questions, go ahead and schedule a call and let's get on the phone and talk. And with that, guys, I like to leave with one last thought. From the time that I wake up in the morning till the time that I lay my head down the rest of the evening, my number one priority with everything I do, whether it be recording this podcast, working for our investors, helping each of you reach your investment goals, to providing a great experience to each of our residents who reside in our communities, is to add huge amounts of value to everyone that I come in contact with. Now, with that being said, I look forward to the opportunity of bringing value to you through Sunrise and through this podcast. Thank you for your time. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the show. All right. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome DJ Pendleton to the show. DJ, how you doing today?
Good. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here, and from the big old state of Texas, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Texas.
I'm here in Austin. Yeah, right here in the middle of Texas. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, DJ, I took some time to read up on your profile. You've been in this industry quite a number of years. You look like a young guy still, so I'm guessing you got in this industry, which is you look kind of young still.
Yeah, it's aging. The grade's coming, more attributed probably to my kids. Some occupational aging too, but yeah, I've been doing it. I'm going on my 13th year here at TMHA, so kind of an interesting gig. But
tell us a little bit about your background, and also what you do there at the Texas Manufactured Housing Association.
Sure. Yeah. Just a quick background. I went to school, came out there for a brief time, worked in the accounting field, worked for a completely unknown accounting firm called Arthur Anderson. I was there in the Dallas office doing real estate tax returns during Enron. That experience kind of prompted, nothing wrong with them. They were involved in it, a great group of people, and they ended up moving over to KPMG. But I took that and kind of took it as a sign in the experience and decided I was going to go to law school. So went to law school, came out, worked a little bit of a time prior to, and then after I got out at the Travis County Attorney's Office in their civil division. So I was doing super exciting, sexy things like reviewing software licensing agreements and toll road construction projects and formulating hospital district boards. So then from that, I was basically looking around. I'm from Austin, born and raised here, so I'm one of those kind of rare unicorns in Austin, but was looking around and kind of through happenstance stumbled into TMHA. That was kind of an point of transition, and went in for a big grueling interview with the three executive members, and for 4 or 5 hours, and they brought me on. And then it was, like I said, it was point of transition, and so I came on initially as general counsel, deputy, and then within about I guess they put a transition plan, and I think like 8 months later they turned it over and gave it to me. So I've been doing it ever since.
Okay, very exciting. So and tell us a little bit about the history of the association there. And I know that countrywide, there's, I don't know how many associations there are. You could probably actually tell me that there's probably numerous states that do not have manufactured housing associations, and there's a number of them that do, that aren't very active. Texas is one of those that is incredibly active. You guys give the industry a lot of support. And so tell us a little bit about the history of your association, and also what it is exactly that you guys do there.
Sure. Real quickly, actually, believe it or not, this association goes all the way back to 1952.
Wow.
And it was originally formed by park owners. And it was, a mobile home park owner, basically, association back then. It's evolved over the years. So, and to your point, some states don't have, some states have two. They'll have basically a association that represents kind of the factory and retail side, and then one that focuses exclusively on communities.
Mm-hmm.
We do both. We have it all. So we represent, like say, every facet of manufactured housing, do some modular housing too, but mostly manufactured housing. So there's everybody from the factories to the street retailers, the install setup guys, the people that finance them, the people that insure them. And then we obviously, our park owners are a huge membership class that we have. About 390 community properties that are members in Texas, which we're trying to grow that market share. We think that there's well over 2,500 at least communities in Texas, so we're trying to grow that. But and what we do primarily, we are the Texas state-based lobby arm for the association, or for the industry. So we try to defeat bad laws, pass good laws that benefit the industry. And we do that at a local or the state level here in Austin, talking to the state politicians, the senators and House members. We've done some stuff and gotten involved in various different degrees over the years in some of the federal issues, whether it was when Dodd-Frank came about, some of the stuff on disaster recovery, things like that. But that's mostly turned over to the national, which we participate in. But our primary focus is Texas.
Okay, fantastic. And then on a direct owner-operator support level, what type of immediate support does someone that joins your association? As you mentioned, there's 390 some odd operators that are currently members. Approximately there's 2,500 communities in the state of Texas, or operators in the state of Texas. So you've got a piece of that market share. It should be a lot larger. I feel like it should be a lot larger in a lot of the states. No, I'm dead serious. I feel like, I guess the question goes, I know that it's the right thing to do. We're a member of all the associations in the different states that we own, minus the few states that really aren't all that active. And I know the benefit. And so I'm kind of asking you, in addition to on a state level, you representing the industry, on a more direct owner-operator level, how do you guys support the little guys, even the guys that own the 1 or 2 parks?
Yeah, which we do have quite a few of those as well as the big kind of big REITs and things like that. So, kind of a multifaceted answer here. I mean, we've got some operational day-to-day stuff that we offer, various different sets of forms, traditional forms if folks are looking for everything from leases or model leases to notices and all those other types of things. So we have a bunch of those. Several of them actually we have translated into Spanish. We have a note and security agreement for those that are interested in that we vetted through several different attorneys and things like that we've worked on and collaborated with for those that are potentially in the owner finance side of things. We offer a bunch of different educational resources. As a matter of fact, this whole last year, we kind of embarked on this. We kind of deemed it internally as like our own internal like community wiki. But basically, it's like these community resources that are broken down by topic. We've got almost 24 of them of your normal heavy hitters. What needs to be in the lease? What needs to be in the contract? How to do evictions? Everything from submetering. We got stuff in there about when they bounce checks to, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, limited English proficiency. We've got a whole bunch of different topics on there that kind of trying to condense down in a smaller isolated forms rather than giving some big, huge, long comprehensive that they can go in there and you can utilize. So we use those a lot now. They've been a pretty big member benefit. We get a lot of traction and stuff out of the forms. We have educational events that we either put on or co-put on, which we just got done with our big annual convention that we had at the Four Seasons in Dallas, where we had about 17 speakers, many of them very focused on the community, both the community manager day-to-day operation, but also the investor side. We team up with some folks that are doing what they call Texco in February. That'll be out of the Woodlands. It's been around for a couple of years. It's specifically focused on community operators or owners. So, we'll put on those various different events. And then lastly, I'll say that, again, going back to what I said before, primarily our role is legislative advocacy. So when the legislature's in, we're tracking, we read every single bill. We track all of the ones that could impact the industry. We notify the industry about them. We seek their input. We've gathered input over the interim to try to put together our own legislative agendas, keep everybody up to speed on what those are. We try to run those bills that we want passed through the process, obviously defeat the ones that we don't, educate everybody about that. And then I don't want to oversell this because I want to admit our own limitations here. But one of the areas we've been trying to get better at, it's just very hard to find a good vendor resource. And I've got another one that I'm actually potentially going to try to transfer to. We've been trying to the best that we can, track when local cities, basically local governments, counties or cities, enact or propose to enact anything related to MH, and then get that information out to those members in the impacted areas, surrounding areas. It's just very difficult in Texas. There's no one big mandated repository or database where all of the thousands and thousands of cities have to post their notices. So, I mean, it's literally trying to find a vendor that is going through and looking at all the various different types of notices that they may or may not post online and, doing control find and searching these things. So we spend it's not for a lack of effort or expense. We've spent a bunch of money and we would continue to, because if we could get it right, I mean, it would be a valuable resource. And when we do get notified and we can get local engagement and people to show up that might otherwise not know, because I mean, literally, Kevin, I mean, the statutes right now require cities to post notice basically in the classified section of the local newspaper, or to put the notice on the outside of the courthouse glass door, like 3 days in advance.
Who reads a newspaper anymore?
Yeah, exactly. It's so hard. It's really hard.
Antiquated.
To try to do that. So we got some things that we'd love to see as things evolve in time to see if we could help that out. They're not there yet. So in the meantime, we're trying to do our very best. But there is an element of local notice. But again, I don't want to oversell it because we do unfortunately don't catch everything.
So what advice would you give that smaller operator that's within any given county in order to stay up to speed with any changes that might be coming down the pike? I mean, literally go to the courthouse once a month and look on their window and see if they have something posted.
I mean, it can be check find out what the certified or the newspaper of record. I mean, that's what it's defined as, the newspaper of record, and look for those notices. The other thing would be, to the extent that they can, sometimes they're not as well received, but try to go down and get involved at the local level proactively before there's a problem, before somebody's gunning you down. are trying to try to know your council members, or at least know the city staff, the clerks, and the various different things like that. See if maybe they have some sort of email listserv. Some of them have and don't have, or if they've got a place that they post online. And then if they've got some sort of more regimented, some of the larger cities will have a little bit more regimented periodic postings, so you can look for that sort of stuff. So those would be some suggestions. But yeah, I fully admit it's antiquated. It is, for those that advocate for more transparency, that there's a lot to go when it comes to local governments in Texas.
So you've been doing this 13 years now. I know that there's probably been a lot of threats and attempted changes within our industry that would hurt us owners and operators and the vendors and providers to this industry in a big way. And so talk to me, maybe just pick the ones that come top of mind of you that you guys have been integral in either repressing or completely abolishing as far as major changes on a state level in Texas.
I'll go with the horror story first. Before my time, admittedly, but it still, the scars are still there and still fresh enough in everyone's memory that we're very keenly aware in Texas in particular about how things in the industry can get catastrophic if you're asleep at the switch and bad things happen at the legislative level. Back in 2001, there was a bill that basically killed the ability to secure a finance lien on a chattel home. The only way you could secure a lien is if it was tied to real property. Well, 90% of the sales in Texas, and almost all of them in communities, are chattel. The industry fell off a cliff. It was coupled with that and our own kind of subprime bubble that burst. But I mean, we went from 48,000 new home shipments in 1998 to down to like 6,000 a few years later. It was devastating. I mean, and of course everybody knows, everybody that was up the other lesson for those people in my position is like, when that stuff happens, everybody at the association gets fired. So there was a reckoning at that level and a rebuilding process. The association was able to mobilize, come back, essentially reverse that out 2 years later. A lot of damage had already been done. But it makes us keenly aware of how important it is that we do not miss things and that we do participate. Now,
what was the original thought process behind that change?
There was a lot of these people are dead now, so I guess I can maybe speak about it more openly. But essentially, there was a political motivation out of a very large landowner who had a direct connection with multiple then state legislators that had some property, extensive amount of property up and around the DFW metro area that got that kicked off. And it was one of those that it was amended on the floor at the very end. Things in the association weren't going all that well at the time, and basically the association's own bill got turned on it and stripped out all the good, brought in all this bad, and off it went before people could stop it. So anyway, that's the life lesson we know and kind of we walk with and keep with for forever. I'll tell you one that a little bit more relevant, a little more timely. We, like a lot of other states, have seen a lot of communities in cities or annexed or in cities who they basically have this "you move, you lose" mentality, where if you move the home out, we're not going to allow you to replace that lot. The way this normally manifests is that you've grandfathered in, which is you're a non-conforming use, and there's a general abandonment provision. If you move something out of a non-conforming use, you can't go back and use it, and they apply it in these isolated lot levels in order to basically punch economic holes in the viability of a community, with the hopes that the community just shuts down. And so there's several states that have laws like this. Florida, Wisconsin. There's a bunch. There's several states. If you're in other states, you have listeners in other states that might not have something on the books. There are at least 3, I think, that I know, maybe 4 state level Supreme Court decisions that go in favor of the community owner, saying no, you got to treat the entire property, not individual lots, as the non-conforming. You got the ability to come in. But anyway, we went in and we advocated for a bill, SB 1248, last session. So Texas is every odd year. So this was in 2017, excuse me. And essentially we said, listen, you have the ability to replace a home if you move it out. And the other thing that we did, we put in there and said, and it's preserved to the original lot size or density that it was when it was first grandfathered in. Because what we ran into as well is we had some cities saying, oh, okay, yeah, you can bring in a new home, but now you got to abide by the new setback. And by the way, the new setback is 35 feet house to house. But in the site built neighborhood, it was 12 feet. That was literally the example in Harker Heights, Texas, that we used and we took to the legislature and said, this isn't right. This is a bad, poorly veiled excuse for discriminating against us. And the Harker Heights people were there and testified against the bill and were asked, like, how can you explain this discrepancy? And the guy just kind of shrugged his shoulders and was like, he couldn't. So, so we were fortunate. That was the hardest bill we've passed in a very long time. The cities, as you can imagine, hated it. There were all sorts of shenanigans, especially right up into the end with amendments and things like that we were trying to fend off. It was very dicey at one point, but fortunately we got it through, got it signed. It's in the law. So that's a more immediate one on when we kind of went into it more proactively, more aggressively, trying to preserve the investment expectation, I guess, that a property owner, community owner has in Texas.
It's unfortunate. I mean, do you see, are there any municipalities that are accepting of manufactured housing communities?
Believe it or not. Well, so I would normally say, and probably if we had done this interview a couple months ago, I'd probably say, unfortunately, not really. We've seen some that are more neutral, that aren't really opposed or against, in particular in areas where there's a tremendous need for housing supply. A lot of this is oil driven. So you get out in West Texas, or when the Eagle Ford was going in South Texas, they just needed supply. They needed housing. I mean, La Quinta in Midland when it's going for $480 a night, they need more supply. So you kind of sometimes get more indifferent, but a lot of times, not really. I mean, we see a lot of ordinances about you got to put up 10-foot wall masonry fences around them. You got to do all this other sort of stuff that they'd never in a million years even contemplate putting into a site-built subdivision or anything else like that. Now, the one exception I'll say, and we'll see as to how it goes, the city of Austin there's a city council member in Austin and there's been a lot of media and kind of other political issues that are drumming up on basically closures. And this is more related to kind of property values and repurposing property for redevelopment. Places like hot markets like Austin, you'll have community owners that say, listen, I got to sell this land because this guy wants to build this giant, high rise, and so, I'm going to sell. And so there's a city council member and talking about basically changing a lot of the non-conforming zoning use and bringing it back in and to properly zone it within the construct of Austin's land planning as MH in the effort to preserve it and preserve affordable housing. Now, we don't know. Yeah, I mean, so it's like one of those things is like we're politically agnostic. So people think that we're in Texas, we all go Republican. We work with Republicans, we work with Democrats, we work with anybody that's in favor of MH, and those that aren't, we try to change their hearts and minds. Well, one at a time. But even this kind of self-proclaimed socialist Democrat in Austin is our friend because he's advocating he wants to bring manufactured home communities and mobile home parks into their fold. Now, that
also would have been the one place I would have never said that was the chance in heck that wouldn't happen.
Well, and like I'll end it with an ellipsis rather than a period in the sense that because what the motivation I think is that he's trying to make it so that it's much more difficult for these parks to be redeveloped. So that even when the big, truckfuls of money come in from these other developers that want to build the big, high rises and stuff, it puts up those roadblocks. Now, if you've got an existing community in Austin, I mean, I did economics, but I'm not an expert in economics. But those values have just increased. I mean, because you've got this primo spot that potentially has got even additional protections against it. Now, the limitation there is it might not be able to be spun off to sold down the line for anything other than a park, or you might have additional hurdles to go through. But anyway, that's one that I'll give you. That's a little bit. And there's an article. There's a couple of news articles that if you want to put it in your notes or something for your listeners, I can link to it and you can see what I'm talking about.
Are there any rent control ordinances in any of the different counties throughout Texas? Is that a concern?
I thought it was so interesting you brought that up. That was one. That was going to be my intermediate step, but I jumped it. So in rent control. Go ahead.
I was going to say in Austin, I thought I heard through the grapevine at some point there was some chatter about that.
So first and foremost, on a state level, rent control is prohibited. It's illegal in Texas. There's a specific statute that basically talks about it. It's kind of couched it. The only way that you can do rent control is with a governor declared disaster through basically the governor's office, and it's to basically prevent price gouging. But otherwise, rent control is prohibited in Texas. Now, that being said, we have started to hear similar to what you said. I've heard other kind of grumblings of local cities trying to do the equivalent of rent control. They don't call it that. They'll call it something like rent stabilization or something to that effect. That's not rent control. We haven't seen those actually be deployed, and then whether or not they would survive certainly any kind of legal challenge or scrutiny under that state law superseding it. We'd have to see that fight come and see how it kind of turned out. But as of right now, we have heard some rumblings. I go and talk to other states and go out to West once a year to hear my counterparts in California, Oregon, Washington, whatever, because I know that what starts out there is going to come to a local city near me about 2 or 3 years later. So anyway, and I know rent control is a huge issue out there. So so we're fortunate to have that one already on the books.
Yeah, interesting. How about any age ordinances? I know this is one challenge, and this is where the state association really came through for us. And this was in North Carolina. We purchased a community there. The local town that it was in a little incorporated town. They had an ordinance. They disliked mobile home parks, just like a lot of towns and municipalities do. They disliked mobile home parks. They kind of attributed mobile home parks to all the problems of this entire town, not taking any of the blame themselves. It was the mobile home parks problem. In any event, this community had been built back in the late 70s, early 80s. All the homes in here were post-HUD homes. Majority of them were early 80s to mid 80s. And then there was maybe about 20% that were, 2005 or newer. And so in their mind, older homes always look like junk. This community actually was a fairly nice community, but as you know, these things get rusty roofs on them. They get rusty siding, and just deferred maintenance will take its toll on anything, whether it's 5 years old or 50 years old, right? And this community was neglected. We came and spent a lot of money cleaning it up. There was about 40 vacant sites in this community. It was actually zone MH. Already had the infrastructure in place. They had homes on them at one point in time. During the chattel crisis, a lot of these homes were repoed and pulled out of there, and they were never replaced. And in any event, our second phase of our turnaround was to bring homes in, both new and used. And we ran into a roadblock. They had a 10-year ordinance based on the age of the home. The home that were brought in could not be any older than 10 years. And in their mind, this was going to eliminate any of those old rusty siding, rusty roof trailers that were, basically the downfall of mobile home parks. And it was quite interesting. I knew that wasn't the case. I knew that old homes didn't have to, be the eyesore that a lot of them were when we took that community over. And so I went in and met with the actual mayor and his town council, and essentially there was a community that we owned at that same time it was in Atlanta, and there happened to be 2 homes in that community. I forget the manufacturer, but they were 2005 model homes. And granted, this was 2015, so this was 3 years ago. But the home that we owned in Atlanta had 2 2005 model homes in it, and both of them pitched roofs, but I don't know. I can't recall who the manufacturer is, but they had metal siding and metal roofs. It must have been probably right around the last year or two where any manufacturer probably still used metal siding on metal on metal of that vintage. In any event, as you and I both know, there's also plenty of manufacturers back in the mid 90s that were doing vinyl siding shingle roofs, right? So I went into this meeting with the town council and the mayor and said, I want to be very clear, make sure we're all on the same page. You guys are essentially looking for homes that look like this. And I showed them a picture of the vinyl sided shingle roof, didn't show them the year of it, years in the back, 1995 I had written. And you guys want to avoid homes that look like this and put the other picture in front of them with the 2005 model home out of one of our communities. And they're like, absolutely. We do not like that look. Everything coming in, moving forward, it's got to be within 10 years, just like that one there. And essentially flip the pages over. And that wasn't really good enough. They weren't very happy about that approach. But we went into about a year-long legal battle to get that essentially, abolished and removed the town ordinance. But the attorney there for the state association supported us and was integral in the success of actually getting that ordinance repealed. Ultimately, we were not able to bring any used homes in over that period of time, but we were proven successful. And I don't think a local attorney without that knowledge or without the industry knowledge would have been able to support us as good as this legal counsel did from the state association. So that was well worth the membership. Obviously, we had other legal fees associated with it, but it was well worth being a member. And so I'm kind of putting that out there to everyone that's listening, that if you own a community here now today, definitely explore your local your state association. Some states aren't all that active. A lot are. Texas, if you're in Texas, if you're buying communities in Texas, be sure to join. I mean, it's such a nominal fee, and the support that you get for the most part behind the scenes is it's invaluable. So with that, you were going to tell another story, and I interrupted you.
No, I appreciate the recommendation. Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo that. I mean, we don't push too hard. We think we're pretty proactive and offer value, but we want people to come and view that for themselves objectively. Mm-hmm. And once we get them, a lot of times they stick around. But I was going to say is, we have not fixed the age problem on a state level. There are cities in Texas that have the same type of deal, 8-year, 10-year minimums. We've been involved in some of that sort of stuff. When they're looking at those types of deals, about rather than doing like a floating year, trying to tie it to, specifically in time, like basically in 1997, I think was 96, and then resulted in 97. There were a bunch of advances within the HUD code. That's like when, for example, when they started coming up with the wind zone levels and things like that. So as things get older, we've advocated or helped people advocate at the local level, like don't put a 10-year float on it, but tie it to anything older than 97 or something to that effect. And here's the justification why, because of the, basically what we're trying to get at is, that the safety and soundness and social, welfare issue is off the table. And so, but you still run into those problems. Potentially, we've got some ideas that we don't know how, we've got some wish list items as to, on a go forward basis, for things like how we could go and try to put some additional state laws that would benefit us in those areas. Mm-hmm. It might be kind of a circuitous route of some of the things we're dealing with, but essentially one would be to try to take the position that, listen, the moment a local government has mandated a certain age restriction, for anyone who has a home that's over that age or approaching that age, they've essentially just destroyed the equity that they have in that house.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, whatever the then persuasive analogy would be. I mean, I live in Austin. I bought a house built in 1963. I mean, if the city of Austin came in and said nobody could buy a house in Austin city limits that was older than 10 years, they'd kill the value of my house.
Wow, what a great argument.
Or if people don't like it and they don't like the site built in the neighborhood, no, it's so different because that's the way they think. It's like, okay, let's say let's take it in the chattel space of it. All right, let's say you own an 8-year-old car, and all of a sudden they came and they say you can no longer drive on these city streets in this car. All right, try to resell your car. It's like, and so you kill the equity. And so with doing that and doing it in a way, like in Texas, we have a provision where, like, if you're going to do any kind of zoning change that might impact the surrounding property values, you got to give everybody within 500 feet a notice before you do it. So they can come participate, and they can come say, listen, we don't like, or we do like what you're going to do. But unfortunately, what we see so often, time and again in the MH space is, often these rooms, these people that are hatching up these plans, most of the time, and I'm not trying to disparage all of the city council members, most of the time, the genesis of all of this stuff comes out of the unelected planning and zoning, volunteers. And those are the people that are a lot of times the most well-off, most affluent people in a community, even if it's a small, low-income rural community. There's still those folks, and they're not representing the others. And so they start there, they get past to the council members, and then before anybody knows it, here these things are, and they've done these things that have impacted our industry, whether it's zoning them out, whether it's putting age restrictions on them, whether it's limiting us to stuff. Mm-hmm. Another bad story I got is we saw a zoning change in the city called in Aransas Pass. We tracked, it was after the fact, unfortunately, where basically half the part of the city was always permissible for site built or MH. They had a zoning change that went through. They said, okay, now it's only going to be site built, except for this one little spot, this one little dot. And you're like, what is that? Why did they do that? There's a huge swath of this territory. Took us a little bit to dig around, and we figured out that one little spot was all the area immediately surrounding the only solid waste treatment facility for the city.
Oh,
so it's like, gosh. So, I get on my soapbox and get fired up really quick when people start talking about, depreciation and these things and these values and comparing these things. It's like, well, if you have actively and proactively sought out to make policy that you're going to isolate these types of communities and you're going to put them in the least desirable places in a city, Like, show me anything that survives that kind of treatment. So anyway, we see a lot of that, work on a lot of that, or continue to work on a lot of that. We on the positive note, if you've got folks out there that are in Texas, I will say a couple of things on the replacement. It hasn't been litigated as to what might do if there is an overlap contest, like if you guys did in North Carolina. If you want to take this to the court now with existing law, I will say there are two laws on the books. One is the ability to replace a home. So if a homeowner has an absolute right to replace their home with a newer home, so long as it's the same size or bigger, not new, a newer home. Mm-hmm. And that can be limited by cities if they make an ordinance to one replacement. But at least you have that. And then this other part of the bill that I talked about, Senate Bill 1248 that we passed on the ability to preserve the lot size and ability to replace homes within communities, that specifically says that you're allowed to replace the homes with a new or used home. That was a point of debate that we knew we were going to get hit if we didn't just advocate for new, but we wanted to include used. We went to our sponsor, to the bill sponsor, and said, we understand if you want to take out used because it's more of a lightning rod contentious deal. Yeah. We want it in there because there's an increased affordability level if you allow used. And she, to her credit, God bless her, she was like, no, I want it in. And sure enough, we got hit. We got hit on it. She defended it. It stayed in there. It's on the books now. So the two bright spots, but they're by far not a silver bullet. And I don't have a good solid case law where somebody went after a 10-year-old ordinance or 10-year limit and said, well, what about this? And I want to replace it. And this state law should preempt this, and how they would adjudicate that. We don't have anything yet on that on the books.
Okay.
But, anyway,
as far as the replacement and actually maintaining that same grandfathered zoning, or I guess unconforming use, did it have to be on the same size footprint if you brought a new home in?
Yes.
So if you took out a 12 by 60, you couldn't bring in a 14 by 70 on that same, without having to then probably conform to the current setback code.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Basically, it preserved the setbacks that you had when it was originally grandfathered. So it became there. That's not an end all be all. I admit, in the sense that if you wanted to bring in a larger home but then overstep that setback, or we've actually been getting, I don't know if you guys and some of your listeners, we've been getting the opposite question now, especially as homes and things get smaller, not necessarily on the tiny home side, but smaller to increase density, to increase the number of lots. Can they go smaller? And it doesn't do that either. It just kind of freezes in time what you had. Yep. And again, it was more of a defensive protection measure, so they couldn't come in there and arbitrarily say, now you've got to have a country mile between two houses. And because the effect of that is, we know it's going to shrink your community to a fifth its size. And we know when we do that, you are now the bad guy because you've got to shut this thing down and kick all these people out. And us, the city, we have a clean hand. So that was the purpose of it. So there are limits of it, though.
Okay. Sounds good. I want to make sure I respect your time, DJ. No. There's definitely something else I wanted to cover here before we wrap it up for the day, and that's hurricanes. You and I briefly talked about this a little bit before we started recording here today, and I know that Houston and the coastal areas of Texas, got devastated last year by Hurricane Harvey, and so I'd love to get a sense from you as to, what that meant for the state, what kind of support on the association level you guys offered to the different park operators and the industry as a whole that were affected by this. And so, this is one of those tornadoes and hurricanes, right? I mean, those two, they're like the nemesis of mobile home parks, right? For whatever reason, that is... seems that those things, those natural disasters, are actually attracted to our communities for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but in any event, talk to me about how you guys made it through and any of the lasting effects that Harvey had.
Yeah, so we're still definitely very involved in Harvey, especially on all the permanent recovery stuff with the disaster funds that are coming down, still the recovery efforts. I will say, maybe start off, on the good news side, I talked to a lot of our community owners in those impacted areas. There are a lot of communities in that Harris County impacted areas, all those impacted areas. And fortunately, by and large, the mass majority of them survived the storm, which was primarily a flooding damage event, very well. A couple of examples were that I spoke with one of our kind of the largest engineering company that focuses on manufactured homes. The guy that he's a professional engineer, he runs his company, and he went down with his whole crew of his guys, and they went and looked at all the ones that they knew that they had installed. Because he said, you do the math, you do the theory, you do the materials, you test this, you do whatever. He's like, but you don't ever have like a real live fire event until you have something like this. And he was just thrilled. I mean, he was giddy as a professional engineer can be when you talk to him about how well everything that they had done had performed. On the community side, we had multiple reports, especially from some of our largest community members who have a lot of properties in those areas. And again, because it was a flooding event and because the homes are naturally elevated, 3.5 feet, the water would come up. They'd have skirting and things like that they'd have to wash away. But by and large, as far as the homes themselves, the assets, the water level never got above the base flood level. And with that, they sustained almost no damage, for the homes. So that was incredibly encouraging for a lot. Now we did have some other communities. We had some that had serious flooding events, 8, 9, 10 feet of water that ballooned out of a river. There's an example here in LaGrange where an entire community was lost. One of the things we've been aware of and watching very carefully, we've seen some isolated instances of this, things we go in and try to help those investors, those owners that have those properties with their various different kind of support and arguments. But when we see communities that are lost, or we see, even manufactured homes that are lost, the ability for those owners to come and bring in new homes and replace those homes and basically rebuild their lives there, obviously within reason, so long as they're not within floodplains and things like that. But just as you would in the multi-million-dollar neighborhood in downtown Houston,
Sure.
They have the same ability to come in and be treated the same way. But we have seen some opportunistic moves that we think, by cities that have said, well, this thing just got all washed away. Boy, we've been wanting to get rid of that thing for forever. Now we're just not going to let it come back in.
Yeah.
And made life really difficult on a lot of people, not just the property owner, but all their
residents. Yeah, absolutely.
Who they all wanted to come back. I mean, a lot of these, as you guys know, a lot of these prime community spaces, they're very socially intertwined. There's a lot of there's a lot of communities we have that have multi-generational and families that all live within these spaces, and there's a lot of sense of community, and people just want to come and return back to those lives just like anybody else would. If you
absolutely, it's their neighborhood.
Yeah, and so when people throw up roadblocks like that, thinking, aha, this is our time. We're going to get rid of that park, and magically we're going to have, the site builders are going to come in and build us $400,000 site build, and our tax base is going to shoot through the roof, and it's going to be great. It's like we have those challenges. And I want to be respectful of your time, but I'll just throw out there, the stuff that makes me pull my hair out, the hairline and the gray. We do see stuff. We had an issue in the city of Odessa. It's still going on. It's on YouTube. I can provide the thing and the link of, they had a city council member. They got one council member out there who he is going on and on about, and he charges the city manager with going out to find out how much money, tax money, they're losing for all of these areas that they have manufactured homes compared to site built. Because we're just losing all of this tax money that we could otherwise be collecting if, magically in this area, all these homes were replaced by $400,000 site built homes. And he charges this person, this is an ongoing effort. There's going to be whatever. He charges these folks with, you need to go forth and find out what this disparity is and how much money we're losing. Now, he never talks about homesteads or people that have tax rates that are frozen over 65 and all the money they're losing there. And then as insidious as it got, on that instance, they, at that similar meeting, they passed additional regulations, local ordinances that were going to require more extensive porches and with covers and steps and a bunch of big landings and other things specifically for manufactured homes in the city of Odessa. So they're layering on these additional expenses to their best and single form of unsubsidized affordable housing that exists. Meanwhile, they're targeting them to basically give them justification for elimination later because they don't bring in enough tax revenue, not to mention what they're going to do with all the people that live there. And then you will love this. And I had to tell this story because it just doesn't get any worse than this. In the exact same meeting, 15 minutes after they're talking about these parks and including all these porches and everything, the same city council in the same meeting approves a $73,000 consulting contract for a consultant to come in and help them with what? Their workforce affordable housing shortage.
Unbelievable.
This stuff happens. So if you want to know the craziness of government and what drives me nuts, but is also part of my job, it's that. So yeah.
Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah. So it's busy, but the good news is I'll say maybe because if we're wrapping up here on a kind of a happy note. In my going on 13 years doing this, the industry right now could not be, thriving anymore, more vibrant, more interest, a lot of outside interest and investment coming in, still flooding into the space, a lot of capital coming into the space, more institutional investors coming into the space. You've got interest from, the GSEs on financing, looking at us with Fannie and Freddie on putting together some programs that potentially over time that might grow. You've got outside money coming in. We've got backlogs at all of our factories. For the first time in several decades, Texas opened up a brand new factory in Waco, Texas, a brand new from ground up, brand new factory member. So we're seeing that going.
Wow.
Shipments are going nuts. Community owners and their vacancies, they're filling these things up. Some of them are actually building brand new from scratch communities. Not a lot, but we used to see none. Now we're seeing more, and we're seeing a lot of expansion projects.
Expansions. I was going to ask you about expansion. Tons of them, right?
Tons of those. People buying adjacent properties, tying them in, and doing expansion projects.
So you're not seeing pushback on a city or county level on those expansion projects?
It all depends on where you're at. Absolutely, they see some that just throw up a whole bunch of hurdles, and people end up walking away. You've got some cities that are very anti-MH. I know there was a struggle in like the city of Kilgore where they really went after a guy that was trying to sell his park and adversely impacted him on that. But then you'll see some other ones that are much more accepting, including some of the larger ones. I know I have a board member, executive board member, who did almost 100 space expansion in a park he had in Harris County, in the city of Houston. Now you had to pay the permits and you had to pay all this stuff. He spent a bunch of money at it. It costs a lot of money to get lots ready these days to do it. But over enough time, his business decision was this was going to make money and do it. I'll tell you the one that's still under process, trying to go through permits and things, breaking ground again. It's here in Austin. They got zoning approval to build a brand new park here in Austin. It did not come easy. The landowner that wanted to do this development, and probably a lot of folks know him in y'all space and industry, but he had to do all the things you might think you'd have to do to get the city of Austin to sign off on a zoning thing. So, he's got rainwater collection. He's got a tree orchard. He's got communal gardens. He's got playground space. He's got all sorts of other stuff that's embedded in there that he needed to get there. But once he got there and he had the affordable housing, presence and pitch, and said, this is what we're going to bring in. We're going to bring in nice stuff. We're going to be whatever. Here are some of the other examples of stuff we've done other places. He got his zoning.
That's exciting.
It goes from the impossible to the hard to the, as long as you pay your permits, we don't care.
Wow. I'm assuming that's not in the city limits of Austin. That's out.
It is.
It is. Is it really? Wow.
It is. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
And that encompasses approximately how many acres? Just generally speaking, how many?
I think it was like, it was quite, I think it
how
was.
many lots, just.
It's going to be a big
size.
I think it eventually is all phased out. Don't make them lie to me. I can find out and get back, but I think all phased out. it was going to be like a 400 place plus park, 400, 500.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So,
very positive things happening.
There you go.
I love it. I love it. Well, fantastic. Well, DJ, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, and again, appreciate your service and everything you do for the state of Texas and the industry as a whole. Hopefully one day here soon, we'll also be an owner operator and part of your association in Texas. Just haven't found a park yet that we
haven't found it. Competition's tough.
It is tough.
I get questions all the time. We go to our little events and one of the speakers will ask, how many people here own parks? And a bunch of hands go up. How many people are looking to buy more parks? Even more hands go up. How many people are here trying to sell their park? No hands go up.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, but you're welcome. Come on, and we'd love to have you. And I appreciate the time today. This has been a lot of fun.
All right. And your website is texasmha.com, correct, DJ?
That's right. Yeah, you can come find out more about us on that. It's Texas spelled out. So TEXASMHA.com. I'm on there. My contact's on there. But you can give us a call, shoot me an email.
And as far as your annual, you mentioned Texaco. I know we have SECO here at the Southeastern Conference. You guys have something very similar in Texas. You had mentioned it in the very beginning. When does that take place?
It's going to be in February in the Woodlands. It's actually a shameless copy of the SECO event.
Is it? I love SECO. It's next week. No, it
is. And we got Caitlin in my office will be down there. She does all of our events things and a bunch of other stuff. So she'll be down there. But we help support that Texaco event. It was actually the brainchild of two of our good members, Sunstone, and then Mobile Insurance, Kurt Kelly, and then Waylon, Grubbs, and Casey Thom kind of put this idea. We're going to put this thing together. They've done it 2 years in a row in League City. They've moved to the Woodlands for a bigger and better venue because it's grown so much. And we just love it and support them and sponsor. And I show up and talk about whatever they want me to talk about. And and it's a great event. And, they've been getting, they've been limited out on size, but they'll get 150 at least easy community owners, folks interested, and probably be even bigger this year. At our convention we just had in Dallas, we had over 360 people show up.
Wow. Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's fantastic. Well, you'll probably see me there in February. I'm going to hopefully by then we'll have a park. Either way, I'm going to come and join in the fun.
Cool. That'd be great. Well, look forward to meeting you in person. And this has been good. And like I said, if anybody has any other questions or anything, that's what we're here for. So let us know.
Okay, great. Thanks, CJ. You take care.
All right. You too.
Congratulations for taking the necessary steps to achieving massive success through the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Be sure to visit our website, mobilehomeparkacademy.com, to download your free digital ebook version of the 21 biggest mistakes investors make when buying their first mobile home park and how you can avoid them. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our free monthly mobile home park investing newsletter, which is jammed full of valuable tips, tricks, and strategies to help you accelerate your path to success as a mobile home park investor. More information about this podcast and its hosts can be found by visiting mobilehomeparkacademy.com.